Welcome to From Our Generation, where we uncover the ideas and events that shape the world we live in today. I'm Crom Carmichael.
And I'm Mike Hassel.
Together we'll explore the past to better understand the present, because history isn't just about what happened, it's about how you think about it. Well, Michael, it is June 26th. Welcome back from your new granddaddy.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
A little
I'm
boy?
A completely different little boy, yes.
Okay.
Arthur.
Named Arthur, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Does he have a round table in his room?
We call him King Arthur.
King Arthur, okay.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
knew that they were going to choose a kind of a traditional name, and we were thinking, Harry or George or Henry, something like that. And
Okay.
so it's kind of in that vein, but it's kind of familiar and unusual. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Arthur's a good name. Well,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. And then you took off from there to Norway.
Yes, my daughter lives in Virginia, and so we went up there to help her and Joe with the early days with baby for
Okay.
about 3 weeks. And then we went to Norway.
Okay.
Had a cruise. It's a big anniversary year for us and birthday, big number.
Okay.
So, had a very nice time in Norway. Learned a lot about what the Vikings are, what a Vik is.
Oh,
It's a bay.
okay.
It's
A
kind of
Vik
like
is a
Vik,
is a
yeah.
Norwegian word for bay.
Yeah,
Oh.
W-I-K or V-I-K. There's very big Germanic influence there, so they conflate W's and V's.
Okay.
So
Yes.
yeah. So I don't know where to say why they may spell it W-I-K, but I think they say it V-I-K.
Okay.
But what they say in their language is not what we say in ours. So I haven't figured all of that out, except to say there's a pretty clear Germanic
Okay.
influence there.
Well, the Norwegians who are coming to the U.S. for the World Cup, they're rowing all over. Wherever they go, they line up and they get, it's like they're in a boat rowing.
Yes.
And they row up escalators.
I have seen a video of them doing that.
They're
Yes.
absolutely hysterical.
It's such great entertainment.
They are clearly having a wonderful time.
Yeah, as are Scots and a bunch
Everybody.
of others. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, well, listen, welcome back. Rush that in for you. You did a wonderful job.
Good.
So the bar is now high.
Okay.
All right, so see how you
I'll
do.
try not to get fired.
Okay. I want to talk about some fairly broad things and then use some things that are going on to talk, individual things that are going on, and juxtapose that against the broader themes. And, we have the Declaration of Independence. We're about to have our birthday. Barack Obama opened his Barack Obama. I don't think it's called a presidential library, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
He opened that. He gave a speech.
Except it doesn't have any documents in it yet.
It doesn't, and it's not going to have many documents in it.
Really?
No, not many. And but at any rate, he gave a speech and he denigrated the Declaration of Independence. Really was very harsh on it, and I think there's a reason for that, because the Declaration of Independence asserts some truths that are either true or they are not. Doesn't matter who says them; it's whether or not they're true or not. And so Barack Obama does not want them to be true. And even when he talks about the Declaration of Independence at other times, he always says that we were created equal. That's what the Declaration of Independence says. He doesn't go on to the next thing, that we're endowed by our Creator.
Yes.
So he always tries to avoid the religious aspect of the Declaration of Independence. And I found that to be interesting. And then he said some very, very good things about the Constitution, but what he said about the Constitution was not at all specific.
Good things meaning approving things?
Well, the way he said it, but our Constitution is a wonderful document.
So approving, yeah, he likes it.
Well, yeah, but he said what the Founding Fathers did was they wrote a document to give us ways for the Constitution to be changed to keep up with the times.
Yeah.
He didn't talk about the Fifth Amendment. I mean, he didn't talk about amending the Constitution.
Yeah.
He talked about that they designed it so that it could keep up with the times. My sense of it is that was a very clever way of saying that with the right Supreme Court, the Constitution
can be reinterpreted
to mean whatever they want it to, and so we'll live in Alice in Wonderland or whatever that words mean exactly what I say they mean, nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah. So then it depends on who's on the court, and that's the fights that we have. It makes it into a political branch.
Yes, and makes the Constitution a political document that's more than what it's supposed to be. But what is interesting about the Constitution is there was tremendous checks and balances in the Constitution, and the reason the Constitution was written the way that it is, or the way that it was, is because the founders didn't trust human nature.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that Barack Obama talks about, and Democrats will talk about, is our democracy, how great our democracy is.
Right.
We don't have a democracy.
Yeah.
We have a constitutional republic, and they are not the same. In fact, they are very different. And in fact, when the Constitutional Convention was going on, there was a great debate over how much direct voting should be allowed because the founders believed that a majority, history showed that majorities destroyed the rights of minorities. And in the case of the founders, for them, the minority that they were talking about was the individual.
I was just going to say a second ago, let me expand on that, and you've kind of done where I was going, but I would put it this way. The founders were very suspicious of democracies.
Yes.
Because they are tyrannies of the majority.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there's all kinds of mechanisms in our government, from the Senate, which is not directly elected, to the division of powers among executive and judicial, the federal system with the states, the Electoral College. All of those things are built as moderating influence on the potential to tyrannize.
Right. And the founders who wrote the Constitution also recognized from the Articles of Confederation that the Articles of Confederation had two fundamental flaws. One was states could coin their own money.
Yeah.
And the other was the states could impose tariffs on each other and on foreign goods.
Right.
And so when they drafted the Constitution, they didn't fix everything, but they fixed a lot. But they absolutely said, we're not going to have an all-powerful national government. We're going to have a national government that has certain powers, but we're going to delegate the rest of the powers to the states. And that's what the Constitution says.
So
and we've gotten away from that.
They would have been very suspicious of this idea that someone has won the national popular vote and therefore they should get power.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's an overlay that's been introduced, particularly since we've polarized into cities versus rural, and most of the population lives in blue. They are blue, and I think for reasons that are pretty obvious that the cities have different interests and needs than otherwise, than people in rural areas. So when you get the popular vote, that means you've got control of the cities. And the founders knew this. They explicitly built the Electoral College so that the government would not become a government of the cities and everyone else ignored.
Well, and also the Constitution limited Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. It's the section for enumerated powers.
Right.
It lists the powers that the national government has, and it's worth. I would encourage our listeners or viewers to go pull out the Constitution, dust it off, and read Article 1, Section 8, and think about whether or not whether or not we're adhering to that, because we did adhere to it for over 150 years.
Right.
It wasn't until the 1930s that, and so 150 years, the states had much more. States had much more power to determine what the rules were for the citizens of their own states.
Let's get back to where you started with this, which is Obama's invocation of our democracy.
Yes.
I can hear it in my head, Hillary Clinton doing the same thing. It's a threat to our democracy.
Yes.
It's said in such an intonation that it's sacred.
Yes.
And it's ambiguous, I would say. What does she mean by our democracy? As you said, we don't literally have one. We don't
have a democracy.
We have a constitutional republic. But what does it mean to say our democracy?
It means exactly what you think it means for them, and that is they don't like the constraints that the Constitution imposes on what they would like to do.
Right.
They don't like those constraints, and the Constitution was designed to constrain people who lusted for power.
Yes.
So it was designed to do that, and so when they talk about the Constitution, they don't talk about it in terms of checks and balances. They talk about these vague terms about democracy and how the founding fathers designed it so that it could change with the times, but not alluding to the amendment process. In other words, they're very clever.
Right.
And so another thing that happened while you were gone, and I don't know if it happened because you were gone.
Maybe.
But Keir Starmer.
I'm very important.
Yeah, you are. Keir Starmer resigned.
Yes.
And he is the 7th prime minister to step down in the last 10 years. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. He was elected by a landslide less than 2 years ago.
Right.
What happened?
Well, a lot of things have happened in Britain, and I'd have to work at capsulizing it. But in the context of Brexit, which is 10 years old now, and a lot of people are blaming this on Brexit. I don't happen to do that. I think having sovereignty is a good idea, and being subject to Brussels and their laws way across the other side of a continent is not a good idea. So I was in favor of Brexit. I remain in favor of Brexit.
Okay.
When you ask what happened, they've had enormous immigration there.
Okay, and he has endorsed it and encouraged it.
Yeah, and lawlessness associated with it.
And lawless associated, especially rape.
Yes.
And the police even now, if you're a female rape victim, and you come forward, if the perpetrator is Muslim, the government comes down more on you for accusing the Muslim than they do going after the Muslim who raped the girl.
Well, I've certainly heard stories of that appearing to be the case.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's systematically true. It's implied that it's systematically true. That's a huge problem if it's systematically true.
Well, this is part of why Starmer is now so unpopular. Mm-hmm. Immigration is the problem. He promised Trump and he promised NATO to increase defense spending, and he didn't. Yeah. So he just lied about that. I mean, you have to call it what it is.
Right.
He said, "I'll do it," and then he didn't. What is that?
Right.
And then the other one is that Sharia law is becoming a bigger and bigger component in the British culture, and the people are getting tired of it. Now, whether or not this changes anything is an open question, because that led me to ask another question, and that is political greatness in an individual. Is it rare? I believe it is. The question is why? Because compared to business, I can name a bunch of visionary business leaders.
Let me just interject for a second. I wanted to make one point because you were raising a big topic that I think we're going to talk about for a little bit.
Yeah.
Another thing that's happened in England is that their living standards have slipped substantially by comparison to its Western peers.
And why is that?
Peers.
And why is that?
Well, their government is too big.
Has become bigger.
Yeah.
Has become bigger and bigger and bigger. And when we go back to the island, we talk about that even on a simple island, when you take one person who used to be working and that person becomes the government, the other 9 people have to do the work of the one person who is now full-time government. Yeah. And if 2 people become government, then the burden becomes greater and greater. And the size of government in Britain and the size of the entitlements in Britain is destroying the living standards of average people.
Well, entitlements associated with a lot of immigration is an awful combination, because those people take a while to assimilate if they want to assimilate. Sometimes they don't.
And they haven't.
Yeah. And so their public sector is absorbing more and more. And so I think I read where their living standards compared to ours have slipped to like half over about a 50-year period.
Okay.
I don't remember where I saw it, and I don't know the exact numbers, but it was substantial. And it's just a little, shaving by year by year by year, they fall behind as they're not as productive. It's not as rewarding to invest capital, and so capital goes elsewhere.
Well, if you look at the United States, United States overall,
I feel that way about the United States too. It kind of breaks me up sometimes.
And also depends on the state. What's fascinating is the bluer the state, the less affordable it is to live in. California is the most expensive state in the country, although it might be challenged by New York.
Yeah, and Illinois is not far behind.
Pardon me?
Illinois is not far behind.
Not far behind, but California and New York are just very, very expensive, and it's because both have enormous governments.
Sure.
And so governments lower the bigger the government, and this is one of those truths. The bigger the government, the lower the living standard. Period. Because government costs money, and it has to be paid for by the productive sector. And the bigger it becomes, the bigger burden it is on the productive sector. And by the way, the people in the government, they don't want to give up any of their income.
Right.
And
no one ever wants to give up income almost anywhere.
Yeah, but if you work for the government, the legislature can keep your income up. If you work in if you work in the private sector and you run a small business, your income is dependent on how well your business does, and your business can go out of business. In Germany right now. There are literally tens of thousands of small businesses that are closing in Germany over the last 36 months. The new chancellor of Germany,
Merz, is that his name?
Was elected less than 2 years ago, maybe 3.
Yeah.
He now is at a 15% approval rating. 15%.
Right.
And it's all economic. It all has to do with the economy. So, but I want to get to this larger question. Why is it that political greatness is so rare? People who are able, Margaret Thatcher, and I don't care whether somebody likes her or dislikes her, you have to look at what was the circumstances in Great Britain at the time that she came to office, and she fixed a lot of the problems. And she was reelected, and I think she served for over 10 years. So think about that. Now we have feckless prime ministers who run on platitudes, hope and change, run on platitudes, then they get in and they can't cut the government because they don't want to. And so therefore, if they don't cut the government, then the average income is not going to go up because it's too big now.
Right.
And so they get in, they get to play prime minister, and that's the way I look at it. They get to play the part of prime minister for a couple of years, and then they resign and somebody else steps up. But why is great political leadership so rare? I think Margaret Thatcher was a great political leader. I would argue that Ronald Reagan was. There's some people who argue that Bill Clinton was. I don't.
Right.
Because when Bill Clinton became president, he passed the largest tax increase,
right,
and he also tried to pass and failed a huge tax on energy, and failed to do that.
Yeah.
But he tried to. And then Hillary Clinton tried to nationalize, for all intents and purposes, our healthcare system. And he allowed her to do that in secret. Then he ran on saying he would reform welfare as we know it. When Gingrich became Speaker of the House and Republicans took over the Senate in his first midterm, they passed welfare reform.
So let's step back a second. First of all, let's talk about what is greatness.
Okay.
People thought John Kennedy was a great leader, and he was charismatic in the same way Bill Clinton was.
And charismatic the way Mamdani is.
Yes, and so if that's what you mean by greatness,
that's not what I mean.
I think it's not what you mean. You're talking about results that improve living standards.
Right. Being able to stand up against the powers that be, who are very powerful, and beating them.
Yeah. And generally that's associated with inflection points where you change a trend and move it the other way. Margaret Thatcher certainly did that.
Yes.
Reagan did that.
Yes.
FDR did that, but in the opposite direction.
In the opposite direction.
Yeah. Lincoln did that, probably in the opposite direction, which was to establish enough central authority to preserve the Union.
Yes.
Right? And so we would probably agree he was great.
Lincoln is a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's so many interesting things about that period in our history, just so many.
One theme you might look for in there is unifying people to get a political movement together that makes change. Washington did that. He unified a bunch of different factions, right, over a long period of time during the American Revolution, but he got a nation formed.
And our founding fathers, they negotiated the Constitution for like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
They just weren't going to leave until they came up with something that they believed was suitable. And what they came up with has stood the test of time.
Right.
For 250 years.
And I think they knew it wasn't perfect, but they knew it was probably the best they could do at the time.
Well, it's also in the preamble.
Yeah.
It's what it says.
Right.
In order to form a more perfect union, not a perfect union.
Yeah.
So it's right there. It's
so I have a couple of thoughts about this. One is that generally businesses do not have the scale that governments do. We expect people to lead the world, and to pronounce on every topic, social, cultural, economic, and I think that's beyond the capabilities of any single person. We put too much trust into centralized institutions to do this.
Okay.
So I believe in limited distributed government.
I'm going to add something for you to think about.
Okay.
And that is, in business, you have a board of directors and you have a CEO, and they generally all have the same. The goals are the same. Now, how you achieve the goals might be different, but the goals are the same.
Yeah.
And so a visionary with the right amount of capital and a good board and good executives, they're all, as the Norwegians do, they're all rowing the boat in the same direction.
Yes.
And in government, that's not the case. In government, when Margaret Thatcher took over, she had to bulldoze the opposition. And in fact, this is an interesting little bit of history. The opposition was so mad at her, they called her the Iron Lady.
Mm-hmm.
And she took that as a great compliment.
Yes.
And because she would not bend, she would not yield, and she won.
Well, this reminds me of what Trump has done in the last week, which is to go to Congress and say, I'm not yielding. I'm not signing your bill until you do this other bill, the SAVE bill.
It'll be interesting to see if that...
It may not work, but
he's trying to make a point.
Unyielding.
Yes, yeah. So political greatness is standing up to very, very powerful interests that oppose you. And for me, I put Reagan in that category.
Yeah.
I don't put any presidents from Reagan to Trump in that category.
Yes.
I could argue that Trump is in that category.
Right.
I could.
Right.
And a lot of people would just go nuts over that. But when you look at what he's doing, I'll give you a few examples. He signed an executive order. He said for every this is in this term, for every regulation that a regulator promulgates, they must eliminate 10. They must bring 10 that they will eliminate. That's big.
It's big. Yeah.
That is big.
Yeah.
And if you look at what he's doing, for example, where he is on immigration, and he ran on this. And this is the other thing that leadership is. Everything he's doing is what he ran on.
Right.
There's no surprises here.
Right.
He ran on
controlling immigration
and removing people who are here illegally.
Right.
And he ran on that. He ran on no taxes on tips, overtime, and cutting Social Security.
Right.
He ran on extending the 2017 tax cuts.
Right.
He ran on Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. And so there's not anything that he is doing that is contrary to what he ran on, and he's meeting incredible resistance from the pro-government crowd.
Yes.
And the pro-government crowd includes about 10% of Republicans in the Senate.
Yes.
And that 10% of Republicans in the Senate is large enough with 100% of the Democrats in the Senate to make it so that Trump can't get his agenda, all of his agenda, passed.
Yeah.
Which is what you just alluded to. But I think it takes a tremendous stomach, tremendous fortitude to day in, day out stand up against
opposition.
And a very powerful opposition that, because its government is incredibly well funded, and standing up against a media that supports big government.
Right. I want to talk about the general topic of governance here
Okay.
that we're sort of talking about, and how businesses differ from government.
All right.
I read a book while I was away that I highly recommend. It's called The Island at the Center of the World, and it is about Dutch New York in the 1600s.
Okay.
Okay. We tend to think that the American colonies derived from England and all of our laws and rights and all that relate to England. What this author makes a point of saying is that New York was very Dutch before it was English, before it was taken by the English. And the Dutch culture was a trading culture all over the world. They had the largest trading empire in the world. Mm-hmm. And so they were very diverse. Okay. In New York at that time, as he says, you would see Bengalis, Congolese, Brazilians. You see people of all different kinds. And in a trading world, you've got to learn to get along with people that are very different.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
And what period of time are you talking
1600s.
about? Okay. And so at that time, let's also remember that at that time, there were zero entitlements.
That's right.
And so everybody who was there had to figure out
That's right.
how to make themselves valuable.
Exactly.
So it didn't matter their culture that they came from. They all had to deal with the same rules, same circumstances.
Well, and they had to get along with other people that they traded with, whether it was native Indians.
Well, in order to do that.
That's right.
But they didn't. And they had, well, the point I'm trying to get at, and I think you're saying, they had to get along with people.
Yes.
It wasn't nice to have. They couldn't survive.
Well, in a free market, they were going to starve unless they could trade effectively with other people.
Exactly.
So the English influence was the Puritans, who were very tyrannical. You know, they claimed that they came to get religious freedom, and then they imposed their way of doing things viciously, I would say. It's maybe a pejorative word, but they were pretty hard on restricting people's discretion.
Okay.
New York was not that way. You had to get along with other people, and you had to tolerate and have a high degree of tolerance for other people's discretion.
Okay.
And so this author's point is that part of what American culture is like today still reflects that Dutch influence, because we have a lot of different kinds of people that have come here. We've learned to get along and try to form a common culture.
But that's
which is part of the problem we have today, is that common culture is threatened. Some people don't like it and want to undo it.
Well, no, but it's threatened because of the entitlements now are so large that there are a whole bunch of people who are not required to figure out how to get along with other people. I mean, that's a big deal. And so let's switch gears here, and right along with what you're talking about, to Mamdani.
Okay.
And we have a video clip that from CNN. I really enjoy this guy. Harry Enton has some great video clips, and he's funny the way sometimes he's very funny what he says, but it's always interesting and insightful. So let's play this video clip about how his polling, and this is, I think this polling is, and we'll see, but I think it's all about New York, not the nation as a whole, although I could be wrong. So let's play this.
We talk about democratic socialists. How are they viewed inside the Democratic Party?
Yeah, you mentioned New York, you mentioned Vermont. Obviously, there's the D.C. mayor. We've seen it in Pennsylvania as well. The Democratic Socialists seem to be doing considerably better than they used to be, and they have the chance to knock off, in fact, Democratic incumbents in Congress. And part of the reason for that, why we're seeing these Democratic Socialists having such good chances or outright winning nominations, is take a look here. Net favorability among Dems. Democratic Socialists of America, look at that. A plus 17-point net favorability rating among Democrats. That is actually better. That is better than how congressional Democrats are viewed by Democrats at just plus 4 points. So no wonder that Democratic Socialists have such a good chance, because simply put, they are a better brand at this point than Democrats in Congress.
Among Democrats, it's interesting to see who they like more. All right, and you've used this number before. I always find this fascinating. When you compare socialism to capitalism, how are they doing right now?
Yeah, how are they doing right now among Democrats? You see this Democratic Socialist America more positive than congressional Democrats. And I'll tell you, take a look at the trend line, that favorable rating among Democrats on socialism and look at this. In 2010, they were about equal. 50% had a favorable view of socialism. 51% said the same about capitalism. But capitalism has absolutely fallen through the floor. Look at this. It's now just 42% of Democrats who have a favorable view of capitalism. Socialism, on the other hand, up like a rocket. Look at this. 2 in 3 Democrats have a favorable view of socialism. So socialism is on the rise among Democrats. Capitalism is on the decline among Democrats. And again, this is part of the longer-term trend in which we are seeing Democratic Socialists doing considerably better among Democrats, electing a mayor right here in New York City, for example.
And as we said, there are primaries next week with Democratic Socialists, self-proclaimed, on the ballot. What are the prediction markets saying about how they may do?
Yeah, this to me is one of the more stunning trends, right, that I have seen in covering politics over the last 15, 16 years. And if you believe the prediction markets, it's not going to just stop suddenly. It may extend into next week, because just take a look at the chance that Democratic Socialists win in Dem primaries, House primaries here in New York. You go to New York 7th District, right? You got a Brooklyn Borough president who at this point looks like an underdog compared to a Democratic Socialist. And then you may get a Democratic incumbent in Northern Manhattan get knocked off. That's closer to a 50-50 race. But the bottom line is this. Next week in New York may be a very good one for Democratic Socialists. Mayor Mamdani endorsing them. His political star is rising, and he may bring a few Democratic Socialists along with him and put them into Congress.
So this was obviously, that video was before the election.
Yeah.
That saw 3 socialists win.
Right.
But here's what's interesting to me, and this is why I brought up Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer won in a landslide. He ran essentially on a socialist platform.
Right.
Making promises he could not keep.
Yes.
The math doesn't work. Socialism, Mike, it's not that socialism doesn't work. Socialism can't work. And the reason socialism can't work is that a competitive marketplace provides information to the people who are participating in the economy, and it gives them the information that they need to adjust their strategies and their behavior. And in the absence of that information, profits and loss sales, margin, all these different things that businesses have to pay attention to in order to stay in business. It's that information that allows them to adjust. Government doesn't work that way. Government is generally a one-size-fits-all. If the government's run a school, then there's not any competition within the school. If they don't think they have enough money, they just ask the taxpayers for more money. If they don't do a good job, they say, we just need more money. And they get more money. And so what's interesting to me is, in New York in particular, and we're going to get into Mamdani here in just a second, Mamdani is making tremendous promises on what he's going to do. He can't do them. And it'll be interesting to see how long his popularity remains. I'll give you an example. The city of New York owns 200,000 public housing units. That's a huge number for a city.
Right.
The housing authority says they need $78 billion to make those public housing units livable.
Yeah.
That is $340,000 a unit on 200,000. He's not doing anything to make the 200,000 units that he already has. He's literally doing nothing to make those livable.
Right.
And in fact, he has now come out and says that he wants to impose a tax to build 200,000 more.
Which would cost, what, $300,000 or $400,000 a unit?
I think it probably, if he's starting from scratch, in New York, it's probably $600,000 to $800,000 a unit.
Well,
but it's not. The point I'm trying to make is that rather than fix what he claims is so terrible, he is the biggest slumlord in New York.
Right.
As mayor of New York, he controls 200,000. Nobody else controls 200,000 units, and he is doing nothing to repair those units. And so the question is going to be, how long does the glow? Keir Starmer's glow lasted less than 2 years. Mamdani is making all these claims, all these promises. He has a great smile. He has a great way of saying things that sound like they make sense, but they really don't. But it's very clever the way he says it.
There was an economist named Buchanan who won the Nobel Prize essentially for talking about Hayek's idea that the pricing system is a giant information system that tells us what to do, what to supply, how it balances against demand. I think what you're describing is that doesn't exist when you have government mandates.
No, it doesn't.
There's no price involved in what you've just described.
No, there's no price, there's no margin, there's no nothing. And so people who are socialists and claim government can do things more efficiently than the private sector, they simply don't have the same information that the private sector has. I don't care how hard they try. That's the point I'm trying to make. It cannot work.
I once upset a friend of my childhood friend who worked for AT&T, and I had gone to Georgia Tech, and I was beginning to learn some of these things and went to dinner with him. He lived in Atlanta by that time, worked for AT&T, and he was telling me about how that was the greatest company in history. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, actually, they don't know how to price anything. They've never had to price anything because they were a monopoly, and they went to a public commission to get permission
to raise prices
to serve, to what they were going to charge. Mm-hmm. There was no competition. And he did not like that.
No, and he believed it.
He believed it, yeah.
He believed that what he was telling you was correct.
And they made good quality, landlines.
Yeah.
And once they did away with that monopoly, look at what has happened in the telecommunications and all the money that's been invested and the creativity and innovation.
And the cost. And the cost of telecommunication is probably down 90%.
Well,
down 90%.
I've just been in Europe, and I could call back to the United States for free.
Yeah, but I mean, traveling is not the norm. Traveling overseas is not the norm.
Yeah.
People do it, and you're right.
Yeah.
When they do, it's much cheaper. But it's even cheaper. It's even cheaper domestically, because it used to be if you called on landline domestically, they would charge you based on the length of time and the number of minutes and the distance.
Yeah,
and it was expensive. I mean, you might have a $10 phone call, and we're talking back when $10 was like $80 today.
Today, yeah.
And so now,
yeah, my grandparents lived in a rural setting, and if somebody called long distance, it generally meant that something had happened bad.
Yeah,
people come running in VR. It's a long distance call. Come in now.
Yes, because something
big has happened.
Yeah, and so what's interesting is the socialists are now saying that they want to tax. And I want to talk a little bit about this. They want to tax. They're now signaling out Elon Musk because he is a trillionaire, so they want to tax anybody with more than, I think it's $5 billion. So I have a suggestion for you. I want you to tell me what you think. I think because if the Democrats win the House, and not the Senate, they will pass a bill in the House to impose a tax, a big tax on Elon Musk's wealth, simply because they simply don't understand, nor do they want to understand, that his wealth is not in cash.
Yes.
He doesn't have the money to pay doesn't have the cash to pay a big tax.
Right.
His net worth is tied up in the equity in his companies.
Right.
But what I would recommend Republicans in the Senate do, and they won't, but they should pass a bill that says anybody with more than a net worth of $1 million, because $1 million is a lot of money. Anybody with more than $1 million in net worth who votes for this bill should pay 5% of their net worth in taxes to prove that they will put their money where their mouth is.
Right. I think that's a good principle.
And so then Republicans who don't have a net worth of $1 million can vote for the bill, and then but only a few. Mm-hmm. So you don't want many.
Right. So
you want every Democrat, including the ones who have a lot of money, to vote for it. Now then the only way that they can, because that's not constitutional. Right. What I just said is not constitutional.
No.
But in order to sue, you have to have standing.
Right.
So you have to have been one of the Democrats who voted for the bill that says you're willing to pay the tax. And then you have to turn around, and then in order to not pay it, you have to sue, which says I really didn't mean it when I voted for it. But then if the courts said that person doesn't have to pay it, it would eliminate the bill. So the bill wouldn't. The effect of the bill.
There's lots of ways it would fail. It's not constitutional. It would just be ruled unconstitutional. But what is your point?
Well, it has to go through the courts. And so if you had if you're Bernie Sanders or Ro Khanna, and you want this bill to pass because you have political reasons for wanting to be somebody who taxes the rich, if you vote for it, in Bernie Sanders' case, he's going to have to write a check for about $400,000 to $500,000, and so he might vote for it and then sue, claiming that since the bill doesn't apply to everybody in Congress, he doesn't have to. But you have to have voted for it to have standing. So then he would look like he was a hypocrite. So I'm just saying, these are, to me, if I'm Republicans, because what do you do? How do Republicans handle it when Bernie Sanders stands up and says we want to tax Elon Musk, a trillionaire, 5%? Are Republicans going to be effective politically in defending Elon Musk on principle?
No, they generally don't.
I don't think you'd win on that in principle. So what you do is you say, if you want to tax Elon Musk, then and you've got more than $1 million and you're voting for the bill, you should pay too.
Yeah.
Because you have the power. You're an oligarch. And by the way, Bernie Sanders is an oligarch.
Yeah.
Because
we played on a prior episode, I think, a series of him talking about oligarchy.
But what is an oligarchy?
Yeah.
What is an oligarchy?
Yeah.
It's a small group of people who have the power to make the rules that affect everybody else. Well, 100 people in the Senate is a pretty small group of people.
Right.
So I would say that Bernie Sanders is probably the most powerful oligarch in our country, and he ought to, if he wants to tax Elon Musk, he's a very rich man. His children, if he has any, are grown. He has plenty of money. He can pay He can pay the taxes and prove that he's willing to do it too. And so I just think that, and it wouldn't affect any other millionaires. It would just be the ones in Congress who voted for it.
Well, it's an interesting thought experiment. It'll never happen. But we're trying to tease out the principles at work here. Let me make one observation before we pass this by about democratic socialists. We were watching this, and it just occurs to me this morning that a lot of people that believe in this are not natural-born Americans.
Right.
They weren't raised in our culture.
70% of New Yorkers are immigrants.
Yes. And so they come from other traditions, and they believe other things than our culture is based on. And, I mean, you can go through the most prominent among them. Mamdani was born in Africa. He's of Indian descent, right? AOC is from Puerto Rico. I think maybe first or second generation in the United States.
Ro Khanna.
You have Jamila Prepal in Washington. She's Indian, I think.
And you got a whole bunch of these socialists who are winning.
Yes.
That will now become part of the squad.
Yeah. So my point is, these are not people that are committed to the Constitution.
No, that's the point. That's why I say that the way Obama thinks the Constitution is, these people can change it through statute. because that was how, according to him, that's how it was designed, which is not how it was designed at all. He just says it was.
Right.
Now, this is interesting. It's a quote. This is what the Democrat Socialists of America stand for. Abolish ICE because this agency exists to control communities, not to keep us safe. Create a 4-day, 32-hour work week with no loss in pay. A universal basic income, as well as a federal jobs guarantee. Free government child care, free pre-K, free college, Medicare for all, including abortion, federal rent control via a 5% national cap on yearly increases for existing units managed by large landlords. She believes all deportations are wrong. All deportations
Now, is this
are
a
wrong.
platform or is this a person?
This is the DSA platform,
Okay.
and because it's a double punishment, and to subject someone who has committed a crime to both a criminal system and then additionally as an immigration system. So in other words, what she is.
Who is she? You said this is a platform.
This is one of these people who ran in New York.
Okay.
For Congress, but this is the
party
Democrat
platform.
the party the Democrat Socialist platform.
Yeah, it's not really a party, but it's a what is it?
It's a wing.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a wing of the party.
All right.
And so this is what that wing of the Democrat Party stands for, and so I just find this to be now New York I think is one of the bluest states, in New York City, and these areas of New York City are the bluest of the blue.
Right.
And
let me just make this statement that there is so much fantasy in that platform that could only appeal to somebody that's ignorant.
Right. That's the point I'm trying to make. When I say socialism can't work, what they are promising cannot be done. Those are promises they cannot keep.
Right.
But they're put in positions of immense power.
Right.
Because of the promises.
How long do you think it will take for them to be found out, to be elected and found out they can't do what they imagined to be
the question,
possible?
I don't think it'll take long, but if the media doesn't cover it properly, accurately, truthfully, then it'll be longer than it otherwise should be.
That's true.
And because if the New York media is not covering that Mamdani as mayor is the largest slumlord in New York City, every time he attacks apartment owners, if the news said he owns more than anybody and he's doing nothing, if they did that, his power wouldn't last very long. But I don't think the media does that. I think the media hides stories like that. It doesn't report them. And so this will be an interesting thing to see just how far the Democrat Socialists get, because a Democrat Socialist won the mayor's race in Seattle. in Seattle. A Democrat Socialist may very well win the mayor's race in Los Angeles. Now, these are cities that are in terrible disrepair.
Yes.
And they're in terrible decline.
And they're going to get worse with these policies.
Yeah.
And so what I would say is going to happen is it will be found out. I think it will take maybe a decade or two.
Well,
in the meantime, what's going to happen is those people who are already moving from Los Angeles and New York and Chicago to places like Texas, Florida, Tennessee, they're going to be joined by a lot of their peers. And they'll do a lot of damage to those blue cities. They will lose electoral representation and congressional representation. So over the intermediate term, that is going to decline those areas economically and politically. The question is, what does it do to the places where they go? Because are they going to adopt the habits that have made these more appealing? Or are they going to now start to impose the expectations of blue cities onto
I don't
red
think
states?
the people. I think the people who move from California are they're moving from California for a reason.
For a reason, yeah. I hope that's true. I think it's true in a lot of cases.
It's certainly true in Nashville.
But I do know some come and then they wonder why the government's not paying for some things.
Not many.
That they're used to.
Not many.
Okay.
Not many. I've talked to a lot of folks who have come here from California, from Illinois, and from up east.
Yeah.
And they are not. They're not many who are like that compared to the ones that are already here.
Right.
But here's my concern: if the Democrats get control of the presidency, the House, and the Senate, under Obama's theory that the Constitution can be amended by statute,
right?
would they use that power to fundamentally change our country so that, for example, all states had to do mail-out voting. Right. All states had to count votes for 30 days after the election. In other words, would they change the rules so that it becomes more and more and more difficult
to unseat them?
To unseat them, and forcing the red states to become places where Democrats, in Tennessee,
where Democrats what?
Where they can cheat.
Okay.
Because this is what happens. I mean, if you look at, there's evidence and there's proof. Proof is ironclad.
Right.
Evidence is not necessarily proof, but evidence is still evidence.
Yeah.
And so in the Los Angeles race, Spencer Pratt, while they were counting the votes, he had 28% of the vote very consistently.
In the polls leading up to the election?
No, the votes that were being
after
counted.
The election
after
had
the
happened.
election.
Okay. Yeah.
Up until the day after until after the election. Up until then, Spencer Pratt had 28%, and the woman who was in third place had 21%, and she got up and tearfully conceded to Spencer Pratt, said, "This is terrible that I've lost." Okay. From that moment on, the number of votes that were counted for her was by far the largest percentage of the votes that were counted after that point in time. Karen Bass got enough to keep her where she was. Spencer Pratt got almost no votes. He went from like 28% to down around 10%.
Yeah.
So why is that? That's evidence that there's something not right. Because we're dealing
this is the
we're
way
dealing
Donald
in the
Trump feels about the 2020 election, because a very similar pattern happened in the middle of the night.
Yeah, exactly. And so
and
that's
hard to prove.
You can't prove it.
Yeah.
But you do have evidence.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the 2020 election. We could, but I'm talking about the Los Angeles election.
Right.
And California, very purposefully, the Democrats in California who have supermajorities, they pass laws so that the elections are they're jungle primaries.
Yeah.
So that in November, most of the time, it's a Democrat running against a Democrat. Mm-hmm. So Republicans are completely shut out in California, and that's intentional.
Right.
So when they say we care about democracy and we care about giving people a right to vote, they say it but don't mean it based on their actions.
Sure.
And so let's kind of move on here to a couple. One of the other things that I thought was fascinating, and this is is a Kennedy heir.
Schlossberg
ran for. He's a good-looking guy.
Right.
And he ran for Congress and came in a distant third. Mm-hmm. Spent $1 million of his own money.
This is Caroline Kennedy's son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what we have here is that we now find that for Democrats, a good-looking and a Kennedy doesn't mean anything anymore. I mean, this is I'm saying this is new.
Yeah.
There's not Kennedys have run and lost now 2 or 3 times in a row.
So the royalty has been unseated.
Camelot is no more.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of interesting.
And that's in a primary. We're not talking about how Republicans think about him.
He came in third
in a Democratic primary.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But I want to talk about Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders, as I've said, I believe he is the nation's most powerful oligarch, and he rails against himself. But the latest thing that he has said is that he wants the federal government, the national government, to own 50% of the AI companies. Wants them to own 50%. And here's what he says that AI companies are a public resource. Well, if AI companies and all of the intellectual property that goes into building AI companies is a public resource, what isn't a public resource?
Yeah.
And this is what Bernie Sanders does. Now, Bernie Sanders is a very rich man. And he flies around on private planes. In fact, that's about all. He has security with him all the time. So many of the things that he says he is for are in his personal life. He's a hypocrite, but he is the most powerful. He's a guy that Democrats now. Al Sharpton is now not the guy who Democrats go to kiss the ring. It's now Bernie Sanders.
So Trump hasn't done any favors on that score, because he's taken stock in some of the companies. I think it was NVIDIA that they did some deal with, and the government now owns part of those companies. Mm-hmm. You know, we had this back during the the car companies when they went bankrupt, mm-hmm. and they were bailed out, and then the government owned part of them for a while. it's a very interesting question about what is the wall between private and public.
Yeah, but 50%.
Well, it's absurd.
Well, it's not.
And it would just be, we wouldn't be buying it on the open market. They'd just be commanding those companies.
Well, but then what happens to the company? If you owned the other 50%, would you keep it?
No.
No. So what would happen to the value of the companies?
It would be
They would go
diminished.
close to zero.
Yeah.
Well, not
Seriously
just
diminished.
It might go to zero.
Well, it might, yeah.
Because the government would run the companies.
Yeah.
Because if you own 50% of the stock, the CEO reports to who? The government.
Yeah.
It doesn't report to the shareholders.
Right.
Because the government gets to vote 50%. There's no way to get all the other shareholders to vote to make it a tie. So, I mean, so these are these are things that Bernie says, and the media reports them without saying this is ridiculous or without giving a counter argument. They actually kind of give Bernie's argument when he says it, and I kind of think that maybe you could make the same argument that the media is a public resource. In fact, you could even make a bigger argument that the media is a public resource.
Yeah, you could make a rationale for almost anything. Water is a public resource.
Anything. Farmers' food, the food that farmers grow, John Deere is a public resource, housing, everything.
Right.
And so what I'm saying is that this is where language matters so much. And that's why we talk about
That's why we pick at each other for words. We have a long history of doing that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of entertainment from it.
Yeah. Now there's a bunch of smaller stories. This is one. The headline is a counterfactual Social Security history. Now, here's what's happening. I did not know this. So in reading this article, I'm going to quote from it. This Wall Street Journal. The Social Security trustees warned this month that the dual trust funds will run out in 2034, with the retirement portion exhausted by 2032. At that point, if Congress does nothing, benefits automatically shrink to match the steadily declining revenue from the payroll tax on current workers.
Mm-hmm.
If Congress does nothing.
That's a big phrase.
Oh, yeah. So what could Congress do to make sure that everybody who is collecting Social Security doesn't get a Social Security cut?
Well, they can borrow money or they can raise taxes. What other sources of revenue or cash
they have to change
there?
the law. They have to pass a statute. So would they just? So you're saying that what they do is they wouldn't raise taxes on working people. They would just pass a law to borrow the money.
Borrow the money, and that's what they've done for a few decades now.
I know. I mean, the Social
They will be coming into that.
So it says, but it would mean a 22% benefit cut overnight.
Yeah.
So this is something we're going to pay attention to because I'm not sure that passing a law saying we're going to borrow the money to pay the benefits, I don't know that they can actually do that. But the alternative would be to raise taxes. That would be
well, they're between a rock and a hard place. But what other choices do they have? The benefits either go down or you pay for them from somewhere.
That's right. And so this is what this is why. By the way, when Social Security was passed to begin with, a Republican senator offered an amendment that said that half of Social Security would go into an IRA or something like that for each individual. If that had happened, everybody who is retiring today, everybody and who has been retiring for 20 years would retire financially independent. There would not be a burden on the government.
Yeah, and there's a lot of variables in there about tax rates and income that you had and how much is taken from your part and et cetera. But I've seen some scenarios where ordinary kind of people would have had like $800,000 in assets over a lifetime if they had put it in the market. Yeah. Because the market grows at an average of, 8 to 10%, depending on whether you include dividends and some other factors.
Right.
Social Security benefits don't grow.
Well, but they also
because they're not productively invested.
They're not, and that's the difference. Is Social Security benefits grow only because Congress passed a statute saying
to take more people from other payers.
saying that benefits will increase at the rate of inflation.
Yeah,
and then it just does. Yeah, and then when they run out of money, they go, "What are we going to do now?"
Right.
And so it also kind of goes. That's kind of like the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution, except in this case, they know it's a problem and they're doing nothing about it.
Exactly.
This is one you sent to me. Order from Teachers Union headquarters. No school choice for you.
Mm-hmm.
That was a Wall Street Journal article where in the big, beautiful bill, states that choose to can allow private entities to be set up to collect up to $1,700 from individuals
per taxpayer.
Who then can deduct that $1,700 as a tax credit on the federal return.
Right.
And then that money, that entity then provides scholarships for children within 300% of poverty. So
it's a way of privatizing schools by enabling the financial infrastructure to be paid, essentially at government expense. You don't pay it to the government; you pay it to them instead.
Yeah,
right.
But
because you want things to be more privatized.
Well, I look at I couch that differently. It's for low income kids to have a choice.
Yeah, well, I would do it because I want low income kids to have a choice, and I'd rather put my money into that than to pay it to the government.
Right.
And that's what this law permits.
Well, and teachers unions are telling every Democrat governor, if you approve this for your state, we're going to primary you. She's been very, very clear that any Democrat who supports school choice will be primaried. And this is what I have said many times, is that the greatest risk in our country today, the greatest villain, if you will, is the government employee unions. Not the government employees themselves, but the leadership of the unions, because they work hand in glove with the leadership of the Democrat Party to expand the size and power of government. And that's just a fact.
Well, to me, this boils down to whether we have a command and control economy or a free market where people make choices.
Well, and command and control doesn't work. So you can have a command and control.
Well, this is command and control, which you will eat what we give you.
Right.
You will go to the school we tell you.
Right. And you will get a lousy education.
Yeah.
Too bad.
Yeah.
And they do get lousy educations. And so this one is interesting. In California, you have Gavin Newsom railing against on affordability. Of course, California is one of the most expensive states in the country. So here's an article where Gavin Newsom just signed legislation to increase the premiums on health care for people who live in California. So here he wants to run for president and says California Democrats just did that, voting to raise health care premiums in the state by up to 97% in some cases.
So a health care premium is a price.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it covers a risk of how much risk there is you're going to get sick.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on age and history and things like that, it should be. So when you socialize it, you basically make it into a political command, which I think is what you're saying they're doing here. They're just choosing to double the price for insurance.
Yeah.
So the market doesn't work. It's a command and control mechanism.
Well, the market does work if you allowed healthcare itself to be a market. It's not.
Oh, yeah, I'm saying the market doesn't work with this kind of rule. They're not allowing the market to work.
Right.
You don't make any choice. You pay twice.
Right. And our whole healthcare system is command and controlled by government.
Right.
There are private insurance companies, but they operate under the rules that are imposed by the government, which are inherently very, very expensive. But I just found that to be interesting. And then here's another one on South Carolina. The headline is New Tax Stupidity. Will the last productive person to leave California please turn out the lights?
You said South Carolina.
Excuse me, I'm in California.
California, okay.
Sorry. California seems determined to prove out the old saying President Reagan said about government: if it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. Isn't that great? That's Ronald Reagan. And so at any rate, they're now imposing a tax, alluding to this story, of increasing the health care premiums on most people by $100 per person, and then much higher for some people. But then they're also now imposing a tax on software. So California is now, if you use QuickBooks or Workday or Slack or any of these software programs to improve the efficiency for your company, you're now going to pay California a tax, because they have to keep raising taxes, because this is what the political class that elects them demands, which is the government.
So let me read this. This is perfect. Have you ever heard of the song "Taxman" by the Beatles?
Yes.
I've just looked up the lyrics here, and I'm going to read them. Okay. This is 1966. This is pre-Thatcher Britain.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, taxes were out the roof then. They were highly nationalized in a bunch of their industries. Mm-hmm. This George Harrison, I think, wrote this song. Let me tell you how it will be. There's one for you, 19 for me, which, by the way, suggests what
a 95% tax. And that's
rate.
what it was.
Yeah. Because I'm the tax man. Yeah, I'm the tax man. Should 5% appear too small, be thankful I don't take it all. Because I'm the tax man. Yeah, I'm the tax man. I'll tax the street. If you try to sit, I'll tax your seat. If you get too cold, I'll tax the heat. If you take a walk, I'll tax your feet. Because I'm the tax man. Yeah. Don't ask me what I want it for. Mr. Wilson, who was the prime minister at the time. That was, I guess, the background vocals. If you don't want to pay some more, Mr. Heath, another political guy, because I'm the tax man. Now, my advice for those who die, declare the pennies on your eyes, because I'm the tax man, and you're working for no one but me.
Yeah. Now, they moved to Monte Carlo.
The Beatles did?
The Beatles did, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the British people who are huge income, they moved out of the country because it was truly a 95% marginal tax rate.
Well, you have a lot of people moving out of New York today for the same reason.
Yes, but it's not 95%. That's how bad it got.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is that's how bad it can be under terrible leadership.
Right.
This is what, now this is one where California, they signed a law, Gavin Newsom signed a law in 2022 that imposes extensive requirements for companies, manufacturers, and distributors that package or ship products into California. So this increases the regulatory branch of the state of California because now they have to increase their bureaucracy to regulate all the goods that are shipped into California. You now have 17 red states who are now suing the state of California, and I think this Supreme Court will rule that the Commerce Clause will say
can't do that.
California can't do that.
Well, it's a way of taxing people in 17 states instead of one.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're very clever about looking for. I mean, you've had that. We had a Tennessee company, or you did. You owned it and had a warehouse in California, and they were trying to declare nexus, so you owed them income taxes. And
that was actually in Ohio.
Was it Ohio?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was in Ohio.
Well, it's the same principle.
Same principle.
Yeah.
And so the next one here, this to me is very humorous. There are two of them. As climate realism rises, climate alarmism coverage is collapsing. The other headline is Al Gore's inconvenient climate assertions. Now, Al Gore has many homes, goes everywhere on private jets, so his carbon footprint personally is huge. But here's some of the things in the inconvenient truth that he said, that he asserted would happen. Al Gore asserted that retreating glaciers were a new phenomenon while ignoring wholesale voluminous historical records that indicate that glaciers have been receding since the 1850s, and even earlier in some cases. This process began long before the industrial emissions of any significant factor. He overemphasized the potential of rising sea levels. Melting snows in Antarctica and Greenland, he claimed, would increase the sea levels by 20 feet. Scientists have since...
And there was a date? Wasn't there a date associated with that? Some of this stuff was supposed to happen by 2015?
Yes, 2015.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in other words, so his predictions of what would happen by certain dates have now all been proven to be not
ridiculously
just wrong,
false,
but egregiously false. Yeah, and yet he still is out there giving speeches, even though he's been completely, in my mind, completely discredited.
Yeah.
With his predictions, but there's a lot of people who still want to hear it, and there's a lot of people in government who are the regulatory class who want to use what he says in order to increase their size and power.
Well, as we've said here several times before, people believe what they wish to be true.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people wish those things to be true because it's a basis for them to get more power.
Yes. Here's a couple that are interesting. A judge blocks the DOJ subpoenaing records from Governor Walz in Minnesota. Now, that won't last. That won't stand. It's a U.S. District Judge, Patrick Schlitz, anyway, ruled on June 17th on subpoenas of the offices of Tim Walz. And what's happened is you've got all this fraud in Minnesota, and they're now trying to determine whether or not Tim Walz was part of it, whether he knew it and allowed it.
And what's the basis for saying you can't subpoena that?
They're saying that he is a political opponent, and you cannot subpoena political opponents. So all of a sudden, no one is above the law is now out the window. And he's not even a political opponent. He's not running for office. He's not running for any office.
Yeah.
He's the governor of Minnesota, but he's not running for national office. And so at any rate, so they're just
Law says what I mean it says.
Yes, yeah. And this is another one. RNC says Fulton and Gwinnett went around Georgia's election law. And now
These are counties in around Atlanta.
Big counties.
Fulton is the main one.
Yes.
Gwinnett is a neighbor.
Gwinnett is a big one. And so they're now suing. And in the article I'm quoting here, Georgia legislators are responsible for making the state's election laws, not unelected bureaucrats. County election boards cannot rewrite those rules by creating unauthorized drop-off locations or weakening safeguards. And so what you have is these are counties controlled. These two counties are controlled by Democrats.
Right.
They don't like the new laws passed by the state legislature, so they're trying
limit their ability to do these kind of things.
Yeah. Think about this for a second. And by the way, Zuckerberg in the 2020 elections, he funded 400 drop boxes in strategically important swing cities.
Yes.
There was no chain of custody on the ballots that went into those drop boxes.
Right.
And so
who knows who put them in the box?
Who knows if the votes were legitimate?
Right.
Because they came out of the boxes and went to be counted, and they were counted.
Yeah.
There wasn't any verification or anything. They were just counted.
Yeah. You have to sign those things, I believe, and it's supposed to be signature matching and all that. Once you strip that away, the ballot is anonymous, and you can't tell who made it. And there's a purpose for that, right?
Yes, and in California, as Steve Hilton pointed out, is that if you mail your ballot on election day, it still counts. If you handwrite the date that you mailed it, not postmark, handwrite it, it still counts.
Wow.
So to
you
me,
could put
that
it
means
in 2 or 3 days later and handwrite a date, claim that you got it in.
Yeah, or they sit there and say, how many votes do we need to get this person from third place to second place?
Right.
And they handwrite it in, and they know who's going to be counting it. You know what Stalin said, I don't care who votes, I care who gets to count the votes.
To me, the interesting part of this is that it's easy to speculate how this system can be rigged, how it can be exploited. What's hard is to prove that it has been exploited, because once they've taken away the handwritten date, there's no basis for an audit.
They have legally given themselves the ability to cheat and to do it legally, if that's not an oxymoron.
Okay.
This one, judge halts Trump's voter citizenship verification system. This is another judge who is now saying that the federal government does not have the authority to oversee federal elections on voter rolls. I think she's going to lose on appeal, but she actually passed this and made it. I think this is one.
Who's she? The judge?
The judge. Let's see here, Miss Sparkle. Anyway, this is. But she passed. It says we have election integrity has arguably proven to be the best representation of Congress's abysmal favorability rating, but the Senate's inability to pass the SAVE Act. So it goes on and on. But this judge, U.S. District Judge Sparkle Suknanan, struck down an executive order from President Donald Trump claiming rights would have trampled on citizens if they have their names removed from voter rolls. So even if you're an illegal immigrant, you can't. They don't want to. She does not think the federal government can audit the voter rolls. I think she's going to be found to be wrong. But this is a very scary thing to me, because if she were elevated along with a few other people to the U.S. Supreme Court, they could rewrite the Constitution so that it could be whatever they want it to be. I don't know if you saw where Ro Khanna claimed that Elon Musk, that his Doge killed thousands of people around the world.
I saw that, yes.
Yeah. I think Elon Musk, I don't know if he's suing Ro Khanna for defamation, but Ro Khanna's trying to walk that back.
So his point was, if you undo these programs that are basically forms of foreign aid,
they're not even. If you really get down to it, they weren't even forms of foreign aid.
Well, that's what they pretended to be. Yeah,
yeah.
That was the purpose of them.
Yeah, a huge percentage of the money was spent in the U.S. before it got distributed to anybody, and then it would get distributed to somebody who was connected. So it was. and we're talking tens of billions of dollars.
Right.
Here's the question. I'm sure you saw this, or at least I hope you did. Tucker Carlson says he will no longer support the Republican Party.
Right.
Now, what do you think Tucker Carlson is going to do in 2026?
What's
as
his
the election
alternative?
approaches? Yeah, as the election approaches, and he very publicly says, I'm not going to support the Republican Party. What will he do?
Well, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't have an answer.
Okay.
I mean, what's a better alternative? I mean, there's plenty of reason to complain about anything. You know, it's like teenagers who get down on everything and they just disapprove of the world, you know, until you grow up a little bit and realize there's some things you have to put up with, right? But what's better? I don't know. I mean, I don't know of a better alternative.
Yeah, but this is Tucker has a big voice.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out as we approach the midterms, what is he going to tell his audience they should do?
Well, I mean, we can run down some possibilities and tell them to sit at home until they approve, you know, of a way of trying to leverage them into changing their priorities.
Okay,
that's
so
typically
you think he might tell people to stay home?
Yeah, I might.
Okay.
One
now that's
possibility.
interesting.
Yeah.
And that would be, you know, essentially then he would be supporting the Democrats.
If you convince Republicans to stay home, yes.
Well, his audience would be mostly Republicans.
Okay.
And so if that's what he chooses to do,
right,
it'd be very interesting, and he could then beat his chest as to how powerful he is if he were to succeed.
Yeah.
And but then he might get something that he wasn't. The law of unintended consequences.
Yeah.
So, Michael, that was kind of what I had for today, and we will we'll continue next Friday. Did you have anything? Oh, I do have a question for you.
Okay.
All right, and that is what has 5 toes and is not your foot?
I'm not fast enough to answer that, so tell me.
My foot.
Oh, your foot. Yeah, that's pretty good. I've got a vulgar version of that. I'm not going to tell on the podcast.
Good.
I will say, I raised the point of reading this book about the island, island at the center of the world.
Okay.
And how important New York was to opening a whole continent to commerce. Okay. And one of the really fascinating points the author makes is that the residents there were starting to demand their rights and a voice in their governance, because it was a outpost of the Dutch trading company, the West India Company or something like that. It was a commercial enterprise with shareholders. Okay, so they were trying to settle for commercial purposes the new world. Okay, so you had people living there that were employees of this company. Mm-hmm. They had no say in how the company was run. It was run almost as a military outpost, because you had opposition from other countries that would like to take away the trading rights, that would like to move in.
This is back when the U.S. population was tiny.
It's the 1600s.
I'm saying.
I mean, these are hundreds or thousands of people on Manhattan.
Yeah.
It's now Manhattan Island.
What were they trading?
A lot of beaver pelts and other furs, which the Indians were really good at catching.
Okay.
And, you know, it wasn't manufactured items.
Sure.
I don't think it was much timber, but furs.
1600, you didn't have the Industrial Revolution. Didn't start till 1760.
It was natural resources, and I think mostly furs. That's the one I remember them talking about.
Okay.
But the point is about governance, that Peter Minuit, or Stuyvesant, I think Stuyvesant was the main guy, was like a military general.
Okay.
What he said went.
Okay.
And there's a basis for doing that, because if you have people laying around drunk all the time and, you know, or fornicating with the Indians or whatever, you end up getting picked off. Right, you die from diseases and stuff, and you just diminish.
Okay.
So there's a reason for enforcing a kind of military order in that environment.
Okay.
But it doesn't work politically when you have, especially over in the continent, people starting to recognize rights and standing up to tyrannical governments. And you had a group of people in Manhattan that were doing that.
So these were the very early.
These were
people.
They were Dutch in what's now Manhattan Island, saying we have rights.
Who were put there by the Dutch, who were told to move.
Well, or they went there to get jobs.
Okay. now they wanted rights.
Now they wanted to have a political order that respected their opinions.
So they were 100 years early, more than 100
yes.
years early.
Yes, and it caused all kinds of political conflict back in the Netherlands about who's going to be in charge there and what they passed one decision that was going to give these people rights, and then I think Cromwell came to power in England, and there was a fight, and they reversed it because they couldn't deal with the diversity of influence.
Okay.
So they just kind of reversed it. So the point is this conflict between commandeering and democracy.
Okay.
Okay. And this is a theme in what we've talked about.
Yeah.
I think we all
It's
believe.
a constant theme. It's a constant theme.
Yeah. And none of us in this room, I think, like command and control. But what is the limit of authority? You have executive actions now that are not really representative of people. They're more authoritative from a single person. I think they're productive in lots of ways, but what are the limits of that?
Well,
it's a hard political problem.
Yeah, and if you pass a law, I mean, for example, to me, the executive order telling the regulators that if you're going to promulgate a regulation, you have to find 10 that you want to get rid of.
Yeah,
that's a positive. That's going to reduce regulation and reduce the size and power of government. And it's impossible to me to argue that a person who's trying to reduce the size and power of government is trying to be king just because he signs an executive order to reduce the size and power of government.
Well, it is a single authority commanding that, right?
Yes, and this, by the way, when they were debating the Constitution, the power of the president was a huge issue.
And still is.
And still is.
Magnified by 10,000 or so.
Yeah. All right. Well, Michael, we will see you next Friday.
Okay, great.
Thank you.